Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations. Devin Holt had built his life on two unwavering pillars: loyalty and persistence. At 43, he'd transformed a small construction company inherited from his father into Holt Development Group, a regional powerhouse in commercial real estate. His weathered hands, still calloused despite years behind a desk, were a testament to his belief in hands-on leadership. "Mr. Holt, the Westlake investors are waiting in the conference room," his assistant Naomi said, interrupting his thoughts. Devin nodded, straightening his tie. Unlike most executives, he still visited every construction site, knew his workers by name, and could operate any piece of equipment on his properties. It was a point of pride that separated him from his competitors. "Tell them I'll be there in 5, he replied, quickly reviewing the proposal numbers one last time. Across town, in the upscale district of Rosewood Heights, Valerie Holt was hosting her monthly charity luncheon. At 38, she was still striking. Her dark auburn hair framed an elegant face with calculating green eyes. She'd been a paralegal when she met Devin 15 years ago, drawn to his intensity and ambition. Over the years, she'd crafted herself into the perfect corporate wife, using Devin's success to climb the social ladder she'd always coveted. "Valerie, this fundraiser is brilliant," gushed Pamela Whitford, wife of the city's banking elite. "You've really outdone yourself." Valerie smiled graciously. "It's nothing, really. Devin always says community matters most." The lie slipped easily from her lips. In truth, Devin had barely noticed the event was happening. Their marriage had been cooling for years, the passion replaced by comfortable routine and mutual benefits. Barrett Reynolds observed the exchange from across the garden, his blue eyes narrowing slightly. At 45, the investment banker had a reputation for being ruthless in business and relentless in pursuit. He approached with 2 champagne flutes. "I believe congratulations are in order," he said smoothly, handing Valerie a glass. "I hear Holt Development just secured the Westlake contract." "Did they?" Valerie's surprise was genuine. Devin rarely shared business news anymore. Barrett's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps your husband should keep you better informed. After all, partnerships require transparency." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a touch that lingered seconds too long. It wasn't their first private moment. What had begun as harmless flirtation at a Christmas party 6 months ago had evolved into secretive texts, then accidental meetings, and finally, deliberate rendezvous at Barrett's downtown penthouse. Barrett wasn't just any affair partner. He was Valmont Capital's rising star, and Valmont was currently Holt Development's primary financing partner. The connection had started as business, with Barrett handling several of Devin's development loans. Now, their entanglement threatened everything Devin had built. Across town, Harold Holt sat in his modest home, reviewing his will one final time. At 78, the retired contractor knew his time was limited. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer had seen to that. What troubled him wasn't death, but what he'd discovered about his daughter-in-law and Barrett Reynolds. Harold had always been perceptive. When a chance encounter at his doctor's office revealed Valerie and Barrett in an intimate embrace, he'd hired a private investigator. What he learned sickened him. It wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated plan. Barrett wanted control of Holt Development's valuable land holdings, and Valerie was his ticket in. With trembling hands, Harold signed the updated will. He'd built his company from nothing, worked alongside his son to make it thrive, and he'd be damned if he'd let vultures pick it apart after his death. "Mr. Holt, are you certain about these changes?" His attorney, Lawrence Mathers, asked cautiously. "More certain than I've ever been," Harold replied firmly. "My son trusts too easily. Always has. Someone needs to protect him, even after I'm gone." What Harold couldn't know was that Valerie had already been accessing Devin's business files for months, feeding information to Barrett, information that would soon give them the leverage they needed. That evening, Devin returned home later than usual, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders. The house was quiet, the staff gone for the night. He found Valerie in the sunroom, laptop open, a glass of wine beside her. "The Westlake deal went through," he said, loosening his tie. "Breaking ground next month." Valerie smiled, closing her laptop with casual haste. "That's wonderful, darling. We should celebrate." Devin nodded absently, not noticing the document she'd minimized or the text from Barrett that flashed briefly on her phone. "They don't suspect a thing. The old man's will is our last obstacle." Chapter 2. Fault Lines. Harold Holt died on a Wednesday morning, the autumn sun filtering through hospital blinds as Devin held his father's hand. No amount of money or influence could halt the cancer that had ravaged the older man's body. Valerie arrived 30 minutes after Harold had passed, her apologies about a charity meeting running long, sounding hollow in the sterile room. "He asked for you," Devin said quietly. "Wanted to say goodbye." Guilt flickered across Valerie's face, quickly replaced by practiced sympathy. "I'm so sorry, darling. Traffic was terrible." She placed a hand on Devin's shoulder, but he moved away, the first visible crack in their facade of marital unity. The funeral 3 days later drew hundreds, workers from Holt Development, business associates, community members touched by Harold's generosity. Devin stood stoic, accepting condolences with quiet dignity. Valerie performed her role of grieving daughter-in-law perfectly, though her eyes frequently strayed to Barrett, who attended as a business associate, representing Valmont Capital. "Your father was an exceptional man," Barrett told Devin, his handshake firm. "Valmont has always valued our partnership with the Holt family." "Thank you," Devin replied, noticing something predatory in Barrett's expression that triggered a primal warning bell. He'd seen that look before, in developers eyeing vulnerable properties before acquisition. As guests mingled at the reception, Lawrence Mathers approached Devin. "We need to discuss your father's will," the attorney said. "There have been some significant changes. Can you come to my office tomorrow?" Before Devin could respond, Valerie appeared at his side. "I'll be there too, of course," she stated rather than asked. Lawrence's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Holt made specific instructions about the reading. I'm afraid I must follow them precisely." That night, Devin found himself alone in his father's workshop, running his hands over the tools they'd once shared. He opened a drawer and found an envelope with his name written in Harold's distinctive script. Inside was a weathered photo of them at the groundbreaking of their first major project and a simple note: "Trust what you built, not what others claim to own. Look closer at everything, especially those closest to you." Confused, Devin tucked the note into his pocket as his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife met with Barrett Reynolds at the Westview Hotel yesterday. Room 718. They've been meeting there twice weekly for months. Check her credit card statements if you don't believe me." Devin's first instinct was to delete the message as cruel mischief. But something, perhaps his father's cryptic warning, made him hesitate. Instead, he logged into their joint account and began searching through statements. What he found turned his blood cold: recurring charges at hotels, expensive gifts never seen, and most damning, a second phone line he knew nothing about. The next morning, Devin sat in Lawrence Mathers' office, the evidence of Valerie's betrayal burning a hole in his pocket. She arrived 15 minutes late, perfectly composed in designer black, a convincing mask of grief in place. "Before we begin," Lawrence said, "I must inform you that Harold made very specific provisions for how this reading should proceed." He slid a document across the desk. "He required that you both sign this confidentiality agreement regarding the contents of his will." "Is that really necessary?" Valerie asked, her voice carrying a note of irritation. "It was your father-in-law's explicit wish," Lawrence replied firmly. They both signed, though Devin noticed Valerie's hand trembled slightly. "Harold Holt's estate is substantial," Lawrence began, "totaling approximately $38 million in assets, properties, and his controlling interest in Holt Development Group." Valerie straightened, her attention sharpening. "However," Lawrence continued, "Harold made significant changes 3 months ago." He looked directly at Devin. He discovered something that troubled him greatly, something that led him to protect his legacy in an unconventional manner. As Lawrence outlined the terms, Devin watched his wife's expression shift from anticipation to shock, then barely concealed rage. Harold had placed everything, the company's shares, properties, even their family home, into an irrevocable trust with Devin as sole trustee. Valerie would receive only a modest stipend, conditional on her remaining married to Devin. "This is outrageous," Valerie snapped. "We've been married 15 years. I'm entitled to." "You're entitled to what the will specifies," Lawrence interrupted calmly. Mr. Holt was very clear about his wishes. Devin remained silent, the pieces falling into place. His father had known. Somehow, he discovered Valerie's betrayal and moved to protect the company and his son the only way he could. Outside the office, Valerie's composure shattered. "This is your fault," she hissed at Devin. "You and that controlling old man always shutting me out. Is that why you turned to Barrett Reynolds?" Devin asked quietly. Valerie froze, color draining from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Room 718. Twice a week for months." Devin's voice remained eerily calm. "Was it just sex, Valerie? Or was it about my company too?" "You're being paranoid," she stammered, but her eyes darted away. "We'll discuss this at home," Devin said, walking away. "I believe we have much to talk about." That evening, Devin prepared dinner himself, dismissing the staff for the night. He set the table meticulously, opened an expensive bottle of wine, and waited. When Valerie entered, her defenses were back in place, a counter-strategy prepared. "I don't know what you think you know," she began, but— "Sit down, Valerie," Devin interrupted, his voice quiet but commanding. "Dinner's getting cold." Chapter 3. Fracture. The dining room of the Holt mansion was silent except for the occasional clink of silverware against fine china. Devin ate methodically while Valerie pushed food around her plate, tension building with each passing moment. "Your father was a spiteful old man," she finally said, breaking the silence. "That will is contestable, and you know it." Devin took a sip of wine, his face unreadable. "Is that what Barrett advised? To contest the will?" Valerie's fork clattered against her plate. "Stop saying his name like that. You don't know anything." "I know everything," Devin replied, pulling out copies of text messages, hotel receipts, and photographs. He laid them on the table one by one. "I know you've been feeding him information about my business for months. I know about the offshore account you opened together." He placed a final document on the table. "And I know about the planned hostile takeover of Holt Development." Valerie's shock was genuine. "How did you?" "My father knew first," Devin interrupted. "He hired someone to follow you after he saw you with Barrett. It seems I wasn't the only one you underestimated." Color rose in Valerie's cheeks. "You don't understand. Barrett and I love each other." Devin laughed bitterly. "Or just love what you could gain together. My company, my assets, my life's work. You were never there." Valerie snapped. "Always at work, always with your precious company. Barrett actually sees me. He sees opportunity," Devin corrected. "And you were an easy path to what he wanted." Valerie's expression hardened. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, slapping it onto the table. "This is your father's original will, drafted before his changes. Barrett had a contact at the law firm make a copy." She placed her hand dramatically on the document, looking Devin directly in the eye. "You won't get a single cent, all right? When we're finished contesting this in court, you'll have nothing." Devin smiled, a cold, dangerous expression that Valerie had never seen before. "Then don't expect a single cent from me either." He slowly set his fork and knife down and stood up. "I want you out of my house by morning." "You can't do that," Valerie protested, her confidence wavering. "I'm your wife. This is my home too." "The home is in the trust," Devin reminded her. "And I'm the trustee. Check the paperwork." The next morning, Valerie left with 8 suitcases and a promise of legal warfare. By afternoon, Barrett Reynolds had filed the first of many motions to contest Harold's will, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. Devin watched the legal maneuvering with calculated patience, appearing to those watching like a man under siege. In reality, he was gathering ammunition, connecting with contacts, and building an intricate web that would eventually entangle his betrayers. Weeks later, nightmare struck. The news broke on a Tuesday. Holt Development facing financial collapse, CEO accused of fraud. The story, filled with leaked documents and anonymous sources, painted Devin as a desperate man falsifying records after his father's death to maintain control of a failing company. Barrett's plan had been set in motion. With Valmont Capital suddenly calling in loans and investors spooked by the allegations, Holt Development stock plummeted. Contractors halted work, partners distanced themselves, and the empire Devin had built alongside his father began crumbling. As Devin left the office that evening, reporters swarmed, shouting questions about fraud, bankruptcy, and his crumbling marriage. Through the crowd, he spotted Valerie and Barrett watching from a black SUV, satisfied smiles on their faces. That night, alone in his study, Devin made a decision. Playing defense would lead to certain defeat. It was time to become the predator rather than the prey. He opened his laptop and began writing a list of names, People who owed him favors, individuals with connections to Barrett's past, former employees of Valmont with grudges to settle. Next to each name, he noted their potential value in what would become an elaborate chess game. By dawn, Devin had formulated the first phase of his counterattack. He'd let them believe they were winning while methodically dismantling the foundation of their victory. He would sacrifice pawns to capture kings, burn bridges to trap his enemies on islands of their own making. And most importantly, he would remember his father's last words to him. Patience and precision, son. Those are the tools that build empires, and the weapons that topple them. Chapter 4. Calculated Losses. Devin Holt disappeared from public view over the next month as headlines about Holt Development's troubles multiplied. The corporate offices downtown sat half empty, projects stalled across the city, and rumors spread about impending bankruptcy. To all appearances, Barrett and Valerie's plan was succeeding brilliantly. What no one saw was Devin working from a converted warehouse on the city's outskirts, surrounded by documents, charts, and surveillance equipment. He'd assembled a small team of loyal employees and specialists who understood the meaning of discretion. They've scheduled the hearing to contest your father's will for next month, said Abigail Winters, a former prosecutor who now served as Devin's legal advisor. Her steel-gray hair and no-nonsense demeanor belied a strategic mind that had never lost a major case. Perfect, Devin replied, studying a complex flowchart on the wall. Let them think they're setting the timetable. Flynn Reeves, a former military intelligence officer who now handled Devin's security and information gathering, entered with a thumb drive. You were right about Barrett's offshore accounts, he reported. Found 3 in the Caymans, 1 in Switzerland. All opened within the last year. And the connections to Valmont's other acquisitions. 5 companies in the last decade, Flynn confirmed. All followed the same pattern. Financial pressure, hostile takeover, asset stripping, then resale at premium prices. Barrett Reynolds was lead strategist on each one. Devin nodded, adding notes to his chart. And my wife's involvement began approximately 8 months ago, Flynn said, his tone professional despite the personal nature of the information. First as an information source, then as an active participant in planning. She's been promised a substantial position in the restructured company plus 20% of the profits from selling off Holt Development's land holdings. The betrayal still stung, but Devin had moved beyond emotion to cold calculation. What about the judge assigned to the will contest? Abigail grimaced. Judge Prentice. He's fair but conservative in these matters. And his connection to Barrett? Nothing direct, Flynn interjected. But his son works for a law firm that handles some of Valmont's smaller acquisitions. Devin smiled slightly. Indirect pressure points. Good. Now, about those building inspectors Barrett bribed. While Devin was building his counteroffensive, Barrett and Valerie were celebrating their apparent victory at Barrett's penthouse. The space was a monument to modern luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture chosen more for status than comfort, and artwork selected by consultants rather than personal taste. To Harold Holt, Barrett toasted, raising a glass of 30-year-old scotch. Who thought he was so clever? Valerie clinked her glass against his. And to his stubborn son, who should have taken our settlement offer when he had the chance. Barrett pulled her close. Another week of financial pressure, and he'll be begging us to buy him out. His hand slid along the curve of her hip. Have you started looking at houses in Aspen? Once this is done, we'll need somewhere suitable for winter getaways. Valerie smiled, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed her features. Don't you think it's strange that Devin hasn't fought back harder? It's not like him to retreat. Barrett dismissed her concern with a wave. He's broken. Lost his father, his wife, and now his company. Men like Devin don't recover from blows like that. What Barrett failed to understand was that men like Devin Holt didn't throw punches in blind rage. They planned surgical strikes when least expected. The first strike came quietly. Landon Pierce, Valmont Capital's chief financial officer and Barrett's right-hand man, received an anonymous envelope containing evidence that Barrett had been skimming from company acquisitions for years, hiding profits that should have been reported to Valmont's board. The second strike targeted Judge Prentice through a seemingly unrelated ethics investigation into the law firm employing his son, suggesting impropriety in several recent cases, including those with connections to Valmont Capital. The third strike was aimed at Valerie. Her social circle suddenly received anonymous text messages with photos of her and Barrett together, dated months before Harold's death, along with snippets of text messages discussing their plans for Holt development. By the time Barrett recognized the coordinated attack, damage control consumed his days. Valmont's board called an emergency meeting. Judge Prentice recused himself from the will contest, and Valerie found herself ostracized by the same social elite she'd cultivated for years. "It's him," Barrett snarled, pacing his office. "Devon's behind this." "But how?" Valerie asked. "We've had him under surveillance. He's barely left that warehouse in weeks." Barrett grabbed his phone. "I don't know, but it ends now. I'm calling in every favor I've got. By this time tomorrow, Holt Development will be facing surprise audits, permit revocations, and credit freezes. Let's see how your ex-husband handles complete financial strangulation." What Barrett didn't realize was that Devon had anticipated exactly this response and had positioned his most valuable assets beyond Barrett's reach weeks earlier. Chapter 5, Countermoves. The headline in the financial section read, "Holt Development divests residential division. Suburban Holdings sold to overseas investment group." The article detailed how Devon Holt had sold off nearly 30% of his company's assets to an unknown Singapore-based consortium for a fraction of their market value. Barrett Reynolds slammed the newspaper down on his desk, his triumphant mood evaporating. "He's liquidating," he told Valerie over the phone. "Dumping assets before we can get to them. Isn't that good for us?" Valerie asked. "It shows he's desperate." "No, it's not good," Barrett snapped. "He's moving money where we can't track it. And these buyers could be straw men, fronts he's using to maintain control while appearing to sell." Barrett's instincts were partially correct. The Singapore consortium, Meridian Partners, was indeed connected to Devon, but not in the way Barrett suspected. Its principal investor was Takashi Yamamoto, whose construction company had been saved by Harold Holt 30 years earlier when local banks refused financing. The debt had never been forgotten, and now Takashi was returning the favor by helping Devon shield assets. Meanwhile, the legal battle intensified. With Judge Prentice recused, the will contest was reassigned to Judge Marlene Sandoval, known for her meticulous attention to detail and impatience with legal gamesmanship. Barrett's attorneys filed motion after motion, each designed to drain Devon's resources and patience. What they didn't know was that Devon had anticipated the war of attrition. While appearing to struggle under the legal onslaught, he was setting up the next phase of his counterattack. "Ms. Winters, they've requested another continuance," Devon observed, reviewing the latest filing in his warehouse command center. Abigail Winters nodded. "Third one this month. They're trying to bleed you dry with legal fees." "Let them think it's working," Devon replied. "What's the status on Operation Disclosure?" Flynn Reeves tapped a few keys on his laptop. "Ready to execute. We've identified 7 former Valmont acquisition targets with principals willing to testify about Barrett's methods. 3 have documented evidence of threats and manipulation. And the SEC connection? Commissioner Delgado owes your father for keeping his nephew out of trouble 5 years ago. He's agreed to expedite the review of our findings." Devon nodded, satisfied. "Execute in 3 days. Coordinate with the financial press for maximum exposure." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. While Barrett focused on the will contest and pressuring Holt Development's remaining assets, Devon was preparing to expose Valmont Capital's acquisition practices to regulatory scrutiny. Barrett had always operated in the gray area of legality, applying financial pressure, creating artificial crises, then swooping in as a savior to acquire companies at bargain prices. But there was one target Barrett had never fully conquered: Weston Manufacturing, a family-owned business that had fought back against Valmont's tactics 3 years earlier. The company had ultimately survived, but its owner, Russell Weston, had suffered a heart attack during the battle. He'd been quietly gathering evidence against Barrett ever since, waiting for the right moment to seek justice. That moment had arrived. With Devon's resources and strategic guidance, Russell Weston filed a comprehensive complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission, complete with documentation of Barrett's methods, recorded threats, and manipulation of market conditions. The news broke on a Thursday morning. SEC launches investigation into Valmont Capital acquisition practices. Executive Barrett Reynolds named as central figure. By afternoon, Valmont stock had dropped 15%, and Barrett was summoned to an emergency board meeting. Valerie watched the coverage from her hotel suite, panic rising. She tried calling Barrett repeatedly, but her calls went straight to voicemail. Finally, a text came through, "Emergency damage control. We'll call later. Stay quiet." As Barrett fought for his professional survival, Devin executed the next part of his plan. Flynn Reeves delivered a package to Landon Pierce, Valmont's increasingly disgruntled CFO, containing evidence that Barrett had been pursuing the Holt acquisition without full board approval, potentially exposing the company to significant liability. Mr. Pierce seemed quite interested in the information, Flynn reported back. "He should be," Devin replied. "His signature is on several of the more questionable documents." Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. That evening, as Barrett finally emerged from hours of interrogation by Valmont's board and legal team, he found Landon Pierce waiting by his car in the parking garage. "We need to talk," the CFO said grimly. "The board wants to distance Valmont from the Holt situation immediately. They're concerned about regulatory attention." Barrett's face hardened. "Tell them to grow a spine. We're too close to back out now." "It's not a suggestion, Barrett," Landon replied coldly. "It's a directive. All actions against Holt Development are to cease immediately. The board is preparing to announce that you acted without full authorization. They can't do that. I built Valmont's acquisition strategy. They can and they will," Landon stated flatly, "unless you want to take full personal responsibility for any legal consequences." He handed Barrett a prepared statement. "Sign this by morning or clear out your office." As Barrett read the document, essentially admitting he'd exceeded his authority and acted without board approval, rage boiled within him. Somehow, Devin Holt had turned the tables, transforming from prey to predator in a matter of weeks. Barrett crumpled the paper. "I'll find another way," he growled. "Holt's not winning this." But even as he made this vow, Barrett's phone chimed with an email from his attorney. Judge Sandoval had scheduled an emergency hearing on Harold Holt's will for the following day, citing newly discovered evidence requiring immediate judicial review. Chapter 6: Sacrificial Pieces. The courtroom was nearly empty when Devin arrived for the emergency hearing. Just his attorney Abigail Winters, Barrett's legal team, and Valerie, who sat alone in the back row, her usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Barrett himself was conspicuously absent, still dealing with the fallout at Valmont Capital. Judge Marlene Sandoval entered briskly, her reputation for efficiency immediately apparent. "Counsel, I've reviewed the new evidence submitted by Mr. Holt's attorney, and I find it sufficiently concerning to merit this hearing. Ms. Winters, please proceed." Abigail rose, composed and prepared. "Your Honor, we've submitted documentation proving that the contest of Harold Holt's will was predicated on false claims and potentially criminal conspiracy." Barrett's attorney objected immediately, but Judge Sandoval waved him down. "I'll hear the evidence first, Counselor." What followed was a methodical presentation of evidence. Recordings of conversations between Barrett and Valerie discussing plans to contest the will months before Harold's death. Financial records showing payments to a law clerk who had access to the original will, and most damning, evidence that Barrett had attempted to bribe Harold's doctor to testify about diminished capacity. By the time Abigail finished, Barrett's attorneys looked shell-shocked, and Valerie had slipped out of the courtroom, unable to face the exposure of their scheme. Judge Sandoval's ruling was decisive. Harold Holt's will would stand as written, the trust would remain intact, and she was referring evidence of potential criminal conduct to the district attorney's office for review. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Devin, hungry for comments on his victory. For the first time in months, he offered a brief statement. "My father built our company on integrity and hard work. Today's ruling honors those values. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to rebuild." As Devin's car pulled away, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously. "Mr. Holt, this is Landon Pierce from Valmont Capital." The CFO's voice was tense. "The board has voted to terminate Barrett Reynolds effective immediately. They've also authorized me to discuss potential reparations for any damages caused by his unauthorized actions against your company." Devin allowed himself a small smile. "I'm listening, Mr. Pierce." Across town, Barrett Reynolds returned to his penthouse to find Valerie packing her designer luggage. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded. "Away from this disaster," she replied coldly. "It's over, Barrett. Devin won. Barrett grabbed her arm. Nothing's over. So we lost the will contest. We can still pressure him financially. Valmont may have gotten cold feet, but I have other investors lined up. Valerie pulled away. You don't understand. I just got a call from my attorney. The district attorney is opening an investigation into our actions. Potential charges include conspiracy, attempted fraud, even criminal solicitation related to that doctor you tried to bribe. Her voice cracked. I could go to prison, Barrett. Don't be dramatic, he scoffed, though his own face had paled. We'll hire the best defense attorneys. No one's going to prison. You might be willing to risk that, Valerie said, zipping her suitcase. I'm not. I'm taking the plea deal they offered. Barrett froze. What plea deal? Testimony in exchange for immunity, Valerie stated flatly. I tell them everything about your plans, the bribes, the offshore accounts, all of it. You treacherous bitch, Barrett snarled, advancing toward her. After everything I promised you? Promises don't mean much when they're built on lies, she replied, backing toward the door. Devin warned me you'd turn on me eventually. Looks like he was right about that too. Devin, you've been talking to him. Barrett's rage was palpable now. Who do you think arranged the plea deal? Valerie asked, her hand on the doorknob. Goodbye, Barrett. I'd say it's been fun, but we both know better. As Valerie departed, Barrett's phone rang. Valmont's security team informing him they were en route to collect his company devices and escort him from the building. Simultaneously, his email pinged with a notification that his accounts were being frozen pending investigation. In the space of 24 hours, Barrett Reynolds had lost everything. His position, his reputation, his leverage, and his accomplice. And Devin Holt, the man he'd dismissed as broken, had orchestrated it all. That evening, alone in his warehouse command center, Devin reviewed the day's developments with his team. The will contest was dismissed, Valmont Capital was retreating, Valerie had turned on Barrett, and regulatory investigations were gaining momentum. Congratulations, sir, Flynn said. Most people would consider this a complete victory. Devin's expression remained serious. This isn't victory, Flynn. This is just clearing the board for the real game. What more could you want? Abigail asked. They're legally and financially crippled. Justice isn't the same as consequences, Devin replied quietly. My father taught me that. Barrett and Valerie tried to steal not just money, but legacy, everything my father and I built together. His eyes hardened. The legal system will handle part of their punishment, but some debts require more personal collection. Flynn and Abigail exchanged glances, recognizing that Devin's campaign was entering a new, more dangerous phase. What's our next move? Flynn asked. Devin turned to a fresh section of his planning wall. Now we make them experience exactly what they tried to inflict on me, complete and irreversible loss. Not just of money or position, but of identity and future. He began writing new names and connections, and we ensure they understand exactly who orchestrated their downfall. Chapter 7. Surgical Strikes. Barrett Reynolds sat in his attorney's office, the gravity of his situation becoming increasingly clear. The SEC investigation had expanded to include all his past acquisitions. Valmont Capital had not only terminated him, but filed suit for breach of fiduciary duty. The district attorney was considering criminal charges based on Valerie's testimony. Be straight with me, Arnold, Barrett demanded of his attorney. How bad is it? Arnold Graves, a veteran defense lawyer who had represented white-collar criminals for 3 decades, didn't sugarcoat his assessment. If the criminal charges stick, you're looking at 8 to 12 years. The civil penalties could exceed $20 million. And that's assuming we can keep some of these cases from going to trial. Barrett paled. What about my assets? Savings? Properties? The court has frozen most of them pending outcome of the Valmont lawsuit. Arnold replied grimly. Your accounts in the Caymans and Switzerland were flagged by FinCEN. They're unreachable for now. This is Holt's doing, Barrett seethed. Somehow he's orchestrated all of this. Arnold's expression remained neutral. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant to our defense strategy. We need to focus on damage control. What neither man knew was that Devin's plan was far more comprehensive than simply triggering legal consequences. While Barrett was distracted by his mounting legal troubles, Devin was systematically dismantling the remainder of Barrett's life. First came Barrett's reputation. Anonymous packages arrived at financial publications containing evidence of Barrett's previous unethical dealings. Companies destroyed, lives ruined, all for profit. The stories ran for weeks, each more damning than the last. Next came his personal relationships. Barrett's ex-wife received documentation of assets he'd hidden during their divorce settlement 10 years earlier. His estranged daughter learned he'd blocked a career opportunity for her boyfriend out of pure spite. Former friends discovered how he'd spoken about them behind their backs. By design, none of these revelations mentioned Devin Holt. They appeared to be the natural consequences of Barrett's own actions coming to light, a house of cards collapsing under its own weight. Meanwhile, Valerie found that her immunity deal came with unexpected limitations. While she avoided criminal charges, the agreement didn't protect her from civil litigation. Devin's attorneys filed suit against her for corporate espionage, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. More devastatingly, Devin arranged for the charity organizations Valerie had used to build her social status to receive evidence of how she'd embezzled from their fundraising efforts, skimming small amounts over years that totaled nearly $200,000. Like Barrett, Valerie soon found herself isolated, her reputation in tatters, her social circle evaporated, and her financial future grim. The prenuptial agreement she'd signed when marrying Devin protected him from having to provide significant support, and her own assets were being consumed by mounting legal fees. 3 months into this systematic destruction, Devin finally made direct contact. Barrett received a hand-delivered invitation to meet at an upscale restaurant downtown. The card simply read, "Time to discuss terms." DH. Barrett considered ignoring it, but curiosity and desperation won out. He arrived to find Devin already seated in a private dining room, looking relaxed and prosperous, a stark contrast to Barrett's increasingly haggard appearance. "You've been busy," Barrett remarked bitterly, taking a seat. "I learned from an expert," Devin replied, pouring wine. "Your techniques for dismantling companies were quite educational. I just applied them to an individual rather than a corporation." Barrett's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, Holt?" "To gloat." "I want you to understand something," Devin said, his voice calm but cold. "Everything happening to you now, the investigations, the lawsuits, the financial ruin, it's all exactly what you planned for me. The precise pressure points you identified in my company. The exact legal strategies you developed, even the timing of the attacks. I'm using your own playbook against you." Barrett blanched. "How did you?" "Your detailed plans were in Valerie's email," Devin explained. "She wasn't as careful as you about security. But that's not why I asked you here." He slid a folder across the table. "These are terms for a settlement of my civil claims against you." Barrett opened the folder cautiously, then looked up in disbelief. "This would leave me with nothing. Literally nothing." "Not quite nothing," Devin corrected. "You'd have your freedom. The criminal charges could be mitigated with the right cooperation. But yes, financially, professionally, reputationally, you'd be starting from zero." "Why would I agree to this?" Barrett demanded. Devin's smile was chilling. "Because if you don't, I'll ensure the criminal case proceeds with every piece of evidence intact. And I'll continue dismantling what remains of your life piece by piece, day by day, until there's nothing left but regrets." Barrett stared at the document, the full weight of his defeat settling on his shoulders. "You've become quite the ruthless bastard, Holt." "I had excellent teachers," Devin replied, standing to leave. "You have 24 hours to decide." "Oh, and Barrett." He paused at the door. "My father said to tell you hello from beyond the grave. He always could spot a predator." Chapter 8. Collateral Damage. The fallout from Barrett and Valerie's downfall extended beyond the principal players. Associates who had helped them in their scheme against Devin found themselves facing consequences of their own. Martin Dawson, the building inspector who had falsely reported code violations at Holt Development Projects, was under investigation by the City Ethics Committee. Charlotte Weber, the banker who had helped pressure Holt Development's creditors, was terminated for irregularities in client management. Even Judge Prentice's son faced an ethics review by his law firm's partners. Devin watched these dominoes fall with methodical satisfaction. Justice, in his view, required comprehensive consequences, not just for the architects of betrayal, but for all who enabled it. However, not everything proceeded according to plan. Barrett Reynolds, facing the obliteration of his life and career, made an unexpected move. Rather than accepting Devin's settlement terms, he called a press conference. "Mr. Reynolds is about to make a statement regarding the allegations against him. a reporter announced on live television. Barrett appeared before the microphones, looking uncharacteristically humble. "I've spent my career in the world of high-stakes finance," he began. "It's a world where aggression is rewarded and compassion is often seen as weakness. I've done things I'm not proud of in pursuit of success." Devin watched the broadcast from his office, skepticism evident in his expression. "Recent events have forced me to confront the consequences of my actions," Barrett continued. "I've hurt people. I've damaged companies. I've betrayed principles that should have guided my conduct." He paused, appearing emotional. "Today, I'm announcing my full cooperation with all investigations into my business practices. I'm surrendering all assets gained through improper means. And I'm asking forgiveness from those I've wronged, particularly Devin Holt, whose family company I targeted unfairly." The performance was masterful, carefully crafted to generate public sympathy while appearing to take responsibility. Social media quickly filled with comments praising Barrett's courage and accountability. "He's playing for public opinion," Abigail Winters observed, watching alongside Devin. "It won't work," Devin replied confidently. "The evidence is too overwhelming." But Barrett had one more card to play. The next day, hospitalized with what was reported as a stress-induced cardiac event, Barrett gave an exclusive interview from his hospital bed, appearing frail and remorseful. "I was driven by the culture of win at all costs that pervades our financial system," he explained weakly. "But seeing how my actions have affected others has been a wake-up call I can't ignore." The narrative of redemption gained traction. Financial commentators began suggesting that Barrett was being made a scapegoat for common industry practices. A few voices even questioned whether Devin's pursuit of justice had become an obsessive vendetta. This turn of events forced Devin to adapt his strategy. A public battle of perception would ultimately distract from his primary goal, ensuring Barrett and Valerie faced irreversible consequences for their betrayal. "Let him have his public redemption tour," Devin told his team. "We focus on the legal and financial realities." He directed his attorneys to proceed with all civil claims while providing the district attorney's office with additional evidence for criminal prosecution. Simultaneously, he arranged for financial forensic experts to trace and document every ill-gotten gain in Barrett's complex web of accounts and investments. Meanwhile, Valerie made her own bid for redemption. Having lost her social standing and financial security, she approached Devin directly, arriving unannounced at his office one afternoon. "I'd like to speak with my husband," she told his assistant. "Ex-husband," Devin corrected, appearing in the doorway. "The divorce was finalized last week. Your attorney has the paperwork." Valerie looked diminished, her designer clothing replaced by simpler attire, her confident posture now uncertain. "Can we talk privately?" In his office, Valerie attempted a different approach than Barrett's public contrition. "We had 15 years together, Devin. That has to count for something." "It counted for exactly $4.3 million in embezzled funds, according to my forensic accountants," Devin replied coolly. "Plus the corporate espionage, of course. I made mistakes," she admitted. "Terrible ones. But this campaign to destroy me completely. That's not the man I married." "The man you married trusted you," Devin pointed out. "He's gone now. Your actions saw to that." Valerie's composure cracked. "What do you want from me? I've lost everything. My reputation, my friends, my future. Isn't that enough?" "That depends," Devin replied, his expression hardening. "Have you lost sleep thinking about what would have happened if your plan had succeeded? Have you imagined me losing everything my father and I built? Have you considered the hundreds of employees whose livelihoods would have been destroyed as Barrett dismantled our company for parts?" Valerie looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "I didn't think so," Devin continued. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you failed." "That's not fair," she protested weakly. "Fair?" Devin's laugh was bitter. "Was it fair to plan my destruction while sharing my bed? Was it fair to betray a man who gave you everything you ever wanted?" He stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "You chose your path, Valerie. Now you can walk it to its end." As security escorted her from the building, Valerie made one final desperate plea. "He'll turn on you too, you know. Barrett always has contingency plans. He's not finished." Her warning, though motivated by self-preservation, contained a kernel of truth. Barrett Reynolds was indeed planning a counterattack, one final, desperate gambit to salvage something from the wreckage of his life. Chapter 9, Final Reckoning. Barrett Reynolds sat in a nondescript hotel room, surrounded by burner phones and laptop computers. His public redemption campaign had bought him breathing room, but not salvation. Criminal charges still loomed, civil lawsuits threatened his remaining assets, and his professional reputation, despite the sympathetic media coverage, remained in tatters. For 3 days, he had been executing what he called Operation Phoenix, a multi-pronged attack designed to destroy Devin Holt once and for all. If Barrett couldn't recover his own life, he would at least ensure Devin didn't enjoy his victory. The plan had 3 components. First, a sophisticated cyber attack on Holt development systems, designed to corrupt project data and financial records. Second, anonymous tips to regulatory agencies suggesting tax evasion and permit violations. Third, and most vicious, a personal attack targeting Devin's reputation through manufactured evidence of harassment and discrimination. "It's done," Barrett muttered, sending the final email in his campaign. "Let's see how you handle this, Holt." Across town, Devin received an alert on his phone, one of many security measures he'd implemented since the conflict began. Flynn Reeves had detected unusual activity targeting Holt development systems. "It's sophisticated," Flynn reported. "But we were ready. The honeypot servers are absorbing the attack while tracing its origin." Devin nodded, unsurprised. "And the regulatory inquiries?" "Already addressed," Abigail Winters confirmed. "We had documentation ready for every potential allegation. The agencies are satisfied we're in compliance." "What about the personal accusations?" "Deflected before they gained traction," Flynn assured him. "The supposed victims immediately issued statements that the claims were fabricated. Your reputation remains intact." Devin checked his watch. "Then it's time for the final move. Is everything in place?" Flynn nodded grimly. "Just as you instructed. Though I still question whether." "It's necessary," Devin interrupted. "Some lessons require absolute clarity." That evening, as Barrett Reynolds prepared to check out of his hotel, a knock came at his door. Expecting room service with his dinner, he opened it without caution and found himself facing 2 federal agents. "Barrett Reynolds? We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of computer fraud, wire fraud, and interstate transmission of threats." Barrett paled. "This is a mistake. I haven't." "We have evidence of cyber attacks originated from this room," one agent interrupted, "as well as documented attempts to file false reports with federal agencies." He held up a tablet showing surveillance footage of Barrett working on his laptops. "The hotel security system has been very helpful." As Barrett was led away in handcuffs, he spotted Devin Holt watching from down the hallway, not gloating, but observing with cold satisfaction. Hours later, in the interview room at the federal building, Barrett sat across from his attorney, the gravity of his situation overwhelming. "They have everything, Barrett," Arnold Graves explained. "The cyber attacks, the false reports, even recordings of phone calls you made to plant the harassment allegations. Someone has been monitoring your every move." "Holt," Barrett growled. "It has to be. Whoever it was," Arnold continued. "They've ensured this case is airtight. With these new federal charges on top of the existing investigations, we're talking decades, not years." Barrett's shoulders slumped in defeat. "What options do I have?" "One," Arnold replied grimly. "Full cooperation, complete disclosure of all financial holdings, and a guilty plea. It might reduce your sentence to 10 years with the possibility of parole." The next morning, as Barrett was being processed for transfer to a federal detention center, a guard delivered an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "Every action you took against me was predicted and countered. Every contingency you planned was anticipated and neutralized. The evidence that will confine you to prison for the next decade was gathered methodically and legally. This is not revenge, Barrett. This is consequence." Devin Holt. Across town, Valerie Morrison, no longer entitled to the Holt name, received her own message, delivered by courier to the modest apartment she now occupied. "Your testimony against Barrett ensured you avoided criminal charges, but the civil judgments against you will ensure you never again enjoy the lifestyle my family's wealth provided. Your betrayal cost you everything you valued. Remember that whenever you think of what might have been." Devin. 6 months later, Devin Holt stood at the window of his restored office at Holt Development Group headquarters. The company had not only recovered from the attempt to destroy it, but had emerged stronger. The publicity surrounding Barrett and Valerie's scheme had generated unexpected sympathy and support, bringing new partners and opportunities. Flynn Reeves entered with a final status report. Barrett Reynolds received a 12-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 8. All his assets have been seized or frozen pending civil judgments. Valerie's appeal of the financial judgment against her was denied. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office in Nebraska. Devin nodded, satisfaction in his expression, but no joy. Victory felt hollow when built on betrayal's foundation. What about the others? He asked. Everyone who assisted them has faced appropriate consequences, Flynn confirmed. Legal, financial, professional, as you directed. And my father's foundation? Fully funded and operational. The scholarship program for children of construction workers begins next semester. Devin smiled slightly, the first genuine smile in more than a year. He would have liked that. Flynn hesitated before asking, "Was it worth it, sir? The time, the resources, the energy devoted to bringing them down?" Devin considered the question carefully. My father had a saying, "Some debts must be paid in full, not just to balance accounts, but to ensure the lesson is learned." Barrett and Valerie didn't just try to take our money or our company. They tried to erase my father's legacy and everything we built together. His expression hardened momentarily. So yes, it was worth it. Not for vengeance, but for justice. And for the message it sends to anyone else who might consider similar actions in the future. As Flynn departed, Devin returned his gaze to the city skyline, where 3 new Holt development projects were now under construction. On his desk sat a framed photo of him and his father at the groundbreaking of their first major project, alongside a handwritten note from Harold that Devin had discovered among his father's papers. Son, buildings rise and fall, fortunes come and go, but integrity and determination endure. Never forget who you are or what we built together. And never let anyone take it from you without a fight worthy of the Holt name. Devin had honored that directive in full. The inheritance game was over, and he had prevailed, not just by defending what was rightfully his, but by ensuring those who had tried to take it would never forget the cost of their betrayal. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.